They say I am their teacher. For me, I am content simply to be righteous. Yet, it is not by our righteousness that we offer supplication before the Most High, for all depends on divine mercy. What is our life? Our strength? Our power? What is our righteousness? Yet they say I am not only their leader, but the teacher of righteousness. So be it. The days of the prophet Daniel have returned. We have all seen the demons of earth, all the powers of darkness let loose. The signs on Belshazzar's wall appear again on the walls of our temple, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. We are weighed in the balance and found wanting. And so I have simply stepped forward to do what I must, which is to lead the elect of God to a new life, far away from the corruption of the Jerusalem temple and its priesthood.
Our land was embroiled in conflict from the moment my father, Mattathias, launched a revolt against the foreign occupiers who oppressed us, the Seleucid dynasty of Syria. My 4 brothers and I, who came to be called the Maccabees, rose in victorious resistance, defeating the enemy in battle after battle, ejecting them from Jerusalem and rededicating our temple, which they had defiled. But the fighting did not end. The Syrians continued to battle against us, even while engaged in their own civil war. One side was represented by a pretender to the throne named Alexander Balas, and the other by the so-called legitimate Seleucid emperor Demetrius I. I managed to become the supreme custodian of the Jerusalem temple by throwing my support behind Alexander Balas, who in turn agreed to acknowledge me, not just as his ally, not just as a priest from the Hasmonean line, but as high priest. I took the office, not for my own sake, but for the people of Israel, who long for lasting independence from Seleucid oppression. This, the renegade Essene sect and their illegitimate teacher call corruption, I call it freedom.
We cannot emphasize enough that Israel in those days was a house divided. It was a division that went back centuries, all the way to the venerable King David, who appointed not 1, but 2 high priests. One of them was Zadok, a descendant of the line of Aaron, the brother of Moses in Jewish tradition. The other was Abiathar, from Moses' own line. Zadok, who anointed Solomon as king, won out, while the line of Abiathar went into a long and lonely exile from the royal court, including Jerusalem's great temple. As a loyal opposition party, they morphed into various expressions, including an anonymous group of visionary prophets responsible for the book of Malachi, as well as the last several chapters of the books of Isaiah and Zechariah. Later, a disparate group of priests, following in the footsteps of the visionary prophets, gravitated toward the lore and literature surrounding the biblical patriarch Enoch, creating a completely alternate Judaism to the Jewish faith recognized today. Scholars call them the Enochians, and their religious movement Enochic Judaism. But the ancient Jewish historian Josephus simply called them the Essenes. The movement appears to have been taken over by renegade Zadokites, themselves displaced from the high priesthood by the victors of the great revolt against the Seleucid dynasty, the Maccabees. Around the same time, a most important document was composed. It was unknown until the middle of the 20th century, when it was discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's known today as the Temple Scroll.
When we Zadokites joined the Essenes, we brought with us a great respect for the books of Moses, the Torah, which had previously been neglected among the Enochians. For them, the books of Enoch were their sole authority. We, however, revere not only the 5 books of Moses, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, but a 6th as well. It is a book that addresses our defiled temple, which has been corrupted by illegitimate priests of the Hasmonean line. It tells us of a new temple, to be built by divine agency in the end of days.
This enigmatic scroll describes a temple compound arranged in 3 concentric square courts, resembling the Israelites' camp in the desert during their exodus from Egypt to the Promised Land. An idealized 4-square temple plan is presented.
You shall make a gate, opening to the roof of the temple, and a way shall be made through this gate towards the entrance of the temple, by which one can reach the upper chamber of the temple. Overlay with gold all this stair house, its walls, its gates, and its roof, from inside and from outside, its column and its stairs. You shall do everything as I tell you. You shall make a square house for the laver in the southeast, on all its sides, each 21 cubits, 50 cubits distant from the altar. The width of the wall shall be 4 cubits, and the height 20 cubits. Make gates for it on the east, on the north, and on the west. The width of the gates shall be 4 cubits, and the height 7. You shall make in the wall of this house, on the inside, recesses 1 cubit in width, and their height 4 cubits above the ground. They shall be overlaid with gold, on which they shall place their clothes, which they have worn on arrival.
This scroll of the temple that is to come, we Essenes hold as authoritative. I cannot tell you how it came about, or when it was transcribed, but it was surely the divine word of the Most High, as dictated to Moses. God is speaking directly to Moses, not through an intermediary, looking forward to a new age. When we Zadokite priests joined the Enochians, they recognized only the books of Enoch as sacred texts. But with this temple scroll, we have reintroduced the whole Torah to the opposition movement that we have now come to lead and dominate. Moreover, the divine voice in the scroll designates us, the sons of Zadok, the sons of Aaron, as the legitimate priesthood. It is this divine sanctuary that we shall help build as the end of days draws near.
The priests, the sons of Aaron, shall send everything up in smoke on the altar, an offering by fire, of soothing odor before the Most High. You shall make chains hanging from the rafters of the 12 columns. Whoever is not a priest shall die, and whoever is a priest but is not clothed in the holy vestments in which he was ordained, they too shall be put to death, and shall not profane the sanctuary of their God, thus incurring the iniquity of mortal guilt. You shall sanctify the environs of the altar, the temple, the laver, and the colonnade, and they shall be most holy forever and ever.
The beauty and grandeur of this temple, as foreseen in the scroll, is beyond measure. The scroll tells us that this temple is for the present world, a temple that is not yet, but should come to be, and will come to be, as soon as we Essenes obtain the authority to build and to operate it. Yet, this is not the final temple to stand in the holy place. It is but an interim temple, which we shall build when the proper Zadokite priesthood is restored in Jerusalem. There remains yet another sanctuary, to come about at the end of days, to be created by the Most High, and which shall surely be an eternal edifice.
I shall accept them, and they shall be my people, and I shall be for them forever. I will dwell with them forever and ever, and will sanctify my sanctuary by my glory. I will cause my glory to rest on it until the day of creation, on which I shall create my sanctuary, establishing it for myself for all time, according to the covenant which I have made with Jacob in Bethel.
According to the temple scroll, the phrase, "until the day of the new creation, when I shall create my temple," refers to a future apocalyptic time when God will establish a new, perfect sanctuary, signifying a complete renewal of the world, and a new covenant with his people, essentially marking the end of the current era and the beginning of a new creation. This temple is seen as a symbol of God's ultimate presence among his people. It's a temple not envisioned by the earlier Book of Jubilees, and it promotes a far stricter code of purity than the earlier Zadokites had imposed in the days of the great Seleucid Syrian king Antiochus III. It was he who had recognized the Zadokite priesthood and allowed them to continue to operate the sacrificial system. For the Essene Enochians, however, the normative Judaism of the Second Temple would not be enough. A divinely established temple called for the greatest level of purity imaginable.
Then there is the matter of the calendar, which is vital in the calculation of our festival days. From time immemorial, our people look to the sun, the greater light, to rule the day, having been set in the heavens on the fourth day of creation as our celestial guide. Following the sun, we lived by a 364-day solar calendar, which was standard in our land until the Seleucids of Syria conquered us, and the despicable king, Antiochus IV, instituted a foreign, lunar calendar, which changes the dates of all of our holy convocations. And although the freedom fighters, the Maccabees, succeeded in ousting the foreign occupiers, the Hasmonean priesthood, who came from their line, kept the lunar calendar. We, the sons of Zadok, have called an end to this corruption. We will follow the original, solar calendar, as detailed in the Book of Jubilees, until the rightful priesthood is restored, until the end of days if necessary.
The Temple Scroll goes on to list extensive, detailed regulations about sacrifices and temple practices, all according to the solar calendar. The year was divided into 4 quarters, each with 3 months. The cardinal day was the extra day at the end of each season. Each season began on the 4th day of the week. The calendar recorded feast days that were fixed to moon phases. The calendar included 4 first fruit festivals, and it included the Feast of the New Oil and the Feast of the Wood offering, 2 additional feasts not mentioned in the Hebrew Bible. The Temple Scroll calendar even includes a 3rd date for some festivals, which is the Sunday following the week of Passover.
On the days of the first fruits of the grain, of the new wine, and the oil, and at the festival of the offering of wood. On these days the tithe shall be eaten. They shall not put aside anything from it from one year to another, for they shall eat it in this manner. From the feast of the first fruits of the grain of wheat, they shall eat the grain until the next year, until the feast of the first fruits. And they shall drink the wine from the day of the festival of wine until the next year, until the day of the festival of the wine. And they shall eat the oil from its festival until the next year, until the festival, the day of offering the new oil on the altar.
The lunar calendar, which the current Jerusalem priesthood now follows, requires a large number of human decisions. People must look at the stars and moon and report on their observations, and someone must be empowered to decide on the new month and the application of leap years. By contrast, the 364-day calendar is perfect. Because this number can be divided into 4 and 7, special occasions always fall on the same day. This avoids the need to decide what happens when a particular occasion falls on the Sabbath, as often occurs in the lunar calendar. The Essene calendar is unchanging and embodies our beliefs regarding perfection and holiness.
We of the Hasmonean priesthood, which I, Simon Maccabee, have established, of course, have no use for a calendar that departs from our own tradition. Nor do we acknowledge the extremism of the Essene Enochians, with their rigid code of purity that far exceeds that of the previous Zadokite priesthood, or the decree of the great Seleucid king Antiochus III. The Zadokite priesthood, which they claim to represent, is no more. I was chosen as high priest and leader of Judea at a large assembly of priests, people, and elders. The assembly decided that I would be their leader forever. until a trustworthy prophet shall arise. The assembly also appointed my sons to succeed me in the positions of high priest, ethnarch, and commander of the army. For this I make no apology.
At the end of the day, the divided house of ancient Israel remained divided. In time, the Essene Enochians would come to accept not only the temple scroll, but the 5 books of Moses, the Torah, which they had previously ignored in favor of the books of Enoch as the central part of Holy Writ. Nevertheless, we have 2 conflicting branches of the Jewish faith, 2 perspectives, 2 very different stories told by competing voices among the Israelites of the Second Jewish Commonwealth. Over the decades to come, their quarrel would only intensify, resulting not only in the Library of Ancient Texts, which today are called the Dead Sea Scrolls, but an assortment of Jewish splinter groups, including the Judeo-Christians. The unfolding of this drama could not be more riveting. There's so much more to come.